The giant metal ship floated in the darkness of space. Inside, blue lights blinked on screens that covered the walls. Officer Dahl stood in the scanning room, her tall figure straight and still. She had gray skin with tiny scales that shimmered when she moved. Her 4 eyes, 2 large ones in the normal position, and 2 smaller ones above, focused on the screen in front of her. Dahl had worked for the Krun Empire for 30 years. In all that time, she had never seen readings like these. The small blue planet should have been nothing special. The creatures there had not even traveled to nearby planets yet, but something was very wrong with the data. "These cannot be right," she muttered. Her long fingers tapped on the control panel, running the scan again. The door slid open with a soft hiss. Tam, her young aide, entered the room. He bowed slightly, his own gray skin looking almost blue under the ship's lights. "Commander Dahl, the High Council wants to know what you found," Tam said. His voice was respectful. Everyone respected Dahl. She was known for being right. Dahl didn't answer right away. She zoomed in on the image of Earth, focusing on a small area in the eastern part of Asia. "This species shouldn't have this technology," she finally said. "They have barely reached their own moon, yet they've created radiation barriers that almost broke our scanning probes." "Could the readings be wrong?" Tam asked. Dahl's upper eyes narrowed. "I checked 3 times. The humans have developed shields that should be impossible at their stage." Later that day, Dahl stood before the High Council's communication screen. 5 old Krun with decorated faces looked down at her. "You will go yourself," said the head counselor. His voice left no room for argument. "This must be investigated up close. If humans have advanced this quickly without detection, they could be a threat to the Empire." Dahl nodded once. "I will prepare immediately." 2 weeks later, Dahl walked through the halls of the Korean Defense Research Institute. She looked human now, her gray skin replaced with pale peach, her 4 eyes merged into 2, her height reduced. The changing machine had hurt, but the pain was worth it for the mission. Her fake papers listed her as Dr. Miley, a visiting scientist from a partner institute. The humans believed her story without question. It was almost too easy to get inside their research building. Dahl's steps slowed as she approached Laboratory 7. This was where the energy signatures were strongest. She pressed her stolen key card against the door, and it slid open. Inside, a man worked alone. He was bent over a table with a small silver device that glowed with strange blue light. This, Dahl knew, must be Jin Ba, the lead scientist mentioned in the files she had accessed. Jin looked up, surprised. "Dr. Lee, I didn't expect anyone today." Dahl smiled the way she had practiced. "I hope I'm not bothering you. I was curious about your particle shield project." Jin hesitated, then nodded. "I guess it's okay. The project isn't secret anymore, not since the breakthrough last month." He waved her over, and Dahl approached the table. The device was small, just a box the size of her hand, but the energy coming from it was incredible. "This is our 3rd prototype," Jin explained. "It creates a field that can stop almost any kind of radiation or particle weapon we tested." Dahl's heart beat faster. This technology shouldn't exist here. Even in the Krun Empire, shields this small and powerful were rare. "How did you develop this?" she asked, keeping her voice casual. Jin smiled proudly. "Actually, it was an accident. We were working on clean energy when we discovered that the field could block high-energy particles. After that, military funding came in. And well," he gestured at the device. "Now we have this." Over the next 3 weeks, Dahl learned more. Each day, she sent encrypted messages back to her ship, which waited hidden behind Earth's moon. The humans weren't just making one kind of weapon or shield. They were developing dozens, each more advanced than the last. Most alarming was the speed. What took other species centuries to perfect, humans accomplished in years or even months. They tried new approaches without fear of failure, learning from mistakes instead of avoiding them. On the 23rd day, Dahl was observing a test of the particle shield when something went wrong. The small box on the testing table suddenly flashed red. Jin yelled for everyone to step back, but Dahl was busy sending a quick message through her hidden communicator. The shield device released a pulse of energy. The humans didn't seem affected, but Dahl felt her disguise technology fail. A terrible tingling spread across her skin as her true form began to show. She ran for the door, but it was too late. The cloaking device that hid her real appearance had failed completely, something that should have been impossible unless the humans had technology that could detect it. "Stop right there," a woman's voice commanded. Dahl turned slowly. 6 guards pointed weapons at her. Behind them stood a woman in a black uniform with silver stars on the collar. Captain Hannah Kim of the Korean Special Defense Force. Dahl had seen her file. "Your physical form isn't human," Hannah said. Her voice was calm, as if she talked to aliens every day. "More interesting is how you modified quantum fields to bend light around yourself. We've been researching similar technology." Dahl felt cold fear spread through her body. This human should be screaming in terror or at least showing surprise. Instead, Hannah looked curious, professional, prepared. "You knew something was coming," Dahl said, realizing the truth. "You've been expecting aliens." Hannah's slight smile confirmed it. "We detected unusual objects in our solar system 3 months ago. Your ship isn't as well hidden as you think." Guards led Dahl to a secure room beneath the research facility. Through the window, she could see humans in lab coats already examining her communicator with tools she recognized from advanced Krun laboratories. That's when Dahl understood the full truth. Humans weren't just weapon makers. They were weapon innovators beyond anything the Krun had seen in 1,000 years. And now they knew they weren't alone in the universe. The Krun Empire had made a terrible mistake. They had found not a primitive world to conquer, but a planet of beings who might soon challenge their entire way of life. Dahl sat in her cell, which didn't look much like a cell at all. The room had a bed, a desk, and even a window. Of course, the window showed only a blank wall. They were deep underground. But the humans had tried to make it seem like a regular room. It was strange. This was not how prisoners were treated in the Krun Empire. The small emergency transmitter hidden in her tooth was her only link to her people. When the guards left, Dahl pressed the tiny button with her tongue and began to speak softly. "This is Intelligence Officer Dahl. Day 4 of capture. These humans..." She paused, searching for the right words. "They adapt at rates that defy evolutionary patterns. What takes our scientists 50 years, they do in 1. Their weapons development cycles complete in years, not centuries." She sent the message and waited. The reply was quick, a simple acknowledgement. Dahl knew her reports were causing waves back home. The Krun Empire had ruled space for thousands of years. They didn't like surprises. Each day, humans came to ask her questions, not with force or pain, but with simple curiosity. Dr. Yun, a small woman with short black hair and kind eyes, led most of these talks. "Why did you come to Earth?" Yun would ask. Dahl gave only short answers at first. "To observe." "Why hide your true form?" "To avoid causing panic." Yun nodded at this, a considerate choice, though unnecessary. "We've been preparing for extraterrestrial contact for decades." This surprised Dahl. "You expected aliens." "We hoped," Yun said with a small smile. "It would be very lonely if we were the only intelligent life in the universe." Far away in the Krun homeworld, Emperor Mox sat on his throne of black metal. His skin was darker gray than Dahl's, almost black in the dim light of the throne room. His 4 eyes glowed slightly red, a sign of his pure bloodline. Around him sat 12 council members, all watching the holographic display of Earth that floated in the center of the room. "Intelligence Officer Dahl reports that humans develop technology at an alarming rate," said General Tor, the head of the military. "They have already created defenses that can detect our cloaking fields. This should be impossible for a pre-interstellar species." Emperor Mox tapped his long fingers on the arm of his throne. His ancestors had conquered 17 star systems. None had presented a threat like this unknown blue planet. This planet must be contained, he declared. No species should advance this rapidly. It upsets the natural order. The council members nodded in agreement. Prepare a containment fleet, Mox ordered. I want ships ready to depart within 20 days. We must act before these humans develop further. Back on Earth, Doll was surprised when guards came to her room and asked her to follow them. They didn't put restraints on her wrists. They simply walked beside her through long white hallways until they reached a large laboratory. Inside, Doll froze. On tables around the room were pieces of equipment she recognized, parts from her scout ship, which had been hidden in orbit around Earth's moon. Dr. Yun stood beside one of the tables. We found your ship 3 days ago, she explained. Quite an impressive vessel. Doll felt fear grip her heart. If humans could find a cloaked Krun ship, their detection technology was far more advanced than she had reported. Don't worry, Yun said, noticing Doll's expression. We haven't destroyed it. We've been studying it. Doll walked slowly around the room. Humans in white coats were examining different parts of her ship. One team had opened the power core and was taking careful measurements. You can't understand that technology, Doll said, but even as the words left her mouth, she saw that they already did. Diagrams on nearby screens showed that the humans had already mapped the basic energy flow systems. Ian led Doll to a small testing area. This is what we wanted to show you, she said. On the table sat a power cell from Doll's ship. Next to it was a human-made copy, but with subtle differences. A scientist activated both cells, and Doll watched in shock as the human version produced 15% more power while using less fuel. How is this possible? Doll whispered. You've only had this technology for days. We don't seek conflict, Yun explained, her voice gentle. We developed defensive capabilities because our own history taught us the importance of protection. We would prefer technological exchange to imprisonment. Doll looked at her in confusion. Exchange. Yes, you share knowledge of space travel and other worlds. We share our innovations. Both sides benefit. Over the next week, Doll was allowed to move freely within the facility. She saw more evidence of human ingenuity each day. They had taken her communications array and improved its range by 30%. They had studied her ship's material and were already testing new alloys that might be stronger. At night, she continued to send reports back to the Empire. Each message was met with shorter and more urgent replies. She knew what was happening without being told. The Krun were preparing for war. On the 15th day of her captivity, Doll gained access to the facility's computer system. The humans allowed it, watching to see what she would do. They were testing her, she knew, to see if she could be trusted. What she found shocked her. The humans had defense plans ready. They had studied her ship and prepared countermeasures against Krun weapons. They might even survive the coming attack. But many would die on both sides. That night, Doll received a message from General Tor himself. Containment fleet departing tomorrow. 17 warships. Arrival at Earth in 6 days. Prepare for extraction. Doll didn't sleep. She thought about the Krun Empire, which had been her home and her loyalty for 30 years. She thought about the humans who offered exchange instead of demanding surrender, who improved technology instead of just copying it. Morning came, and with it, a decision. Doll asked to speak with Dr. Yun privately. Your people are in danger, Doll said when they were alone. The Krun Empire is sending ships to attack Earth. 17 warships. They will arrive in 6 days. Yun's eyes widened. Why are you telling me this? Because you deserve a chance to protect yourselves, Doll replied. And because I believe what you said about exchange being better than conflict. Yun reached out and placed her hand on Doll's gray arm, the first human to touch her without fear. Thank you, Yun said. You've just saved many lives. Doll nodded. I know. She didn't add the truth they both understood. that by warning Earth, she had just betrayed the empire that had been her whole life. There would be no going back now. The 17 warships of the Krun fleet appeared near Earth in bright flashes of light. They were huge metal ships that looked like giant hammers. The biggest ship, called the Imperator, was 5 times larger than the others. It had weapons all over its surface. Admiral Tack stood on the command bridge of the Imperator. He was tall even for a Krun, with dark gray skin and a face marked with battle scars. His 4 eyes looked at the blue planet on the main screen. "So this is Earth," he said. His voice was deep and confident. "It doesn't look like much." "Admiral, we detect defensive systems on the planet and in orbit," said Ren, his tactical officer. "Primitive missiles and energy weapons, nothing that can harm our ships." Tack smiled, showing sharp teeth. "As expected. Begin the containment protocol. Send the first wave of fighters to destroy their major military bases." 50 small fighter ships launched from the Krun warships. They flew toward Earth in perfect formation. On their screens, they could see the human military bases they were ordered to destroy. The fighter pilots were not worried. Humans were supposed to be primitive and weak. Meanwhile, on Earth, people worked quickly in an underground command center. The room was filled with screens showing the approaching Krun ships. Colonel Sue stood in the center, giving orders. She was calm, even though this was humanity's first alien invasion. "All defense stations report ready," said a young officer. "EMPs are charged and targeting systems locked." Colonel Sue nodded. "Remember what Dole told us. Their fighters have no protection against electromagnetic pulses. Wait until they enter the upper atmosphere, then fire." Dole stood at the back of the room with Dr. Ian. The alien woman watched nervously as her former people approached Earth. She had given the humans all the information she could about Krun ships, their weaknesses, their attack patterns, everything. "Will it be enough?" Ian asked quietly. "It has to be," Dole replied. In space, the Krun fighters entered Earth's upper atmosphere, their weapons powered up, ready to destroy the human military bases below. "Begin attack run," ordered the lead pilot. Suddenly, all 50 fighters went dark. Their engines stopped, their weapons died, and their communication systems failed. The pilots found themselves in metal boxes falling from the sky. On the Imperator, Admiral Tack watched in confusion as all contact with the first wave was lost. "What happened?" he demanded. "Unknown, Admiral," Ren replied, checking his screens. "All fighters have gone silent. No response to communication attempts." Tack's eyes narrowed. "Launch the second wave, double the number, and tell them to be alert for primitive countermeasures." 100 more fighters launched from the Krun warships. This time, they were more careful, watching for whatever had disabled the first wave. They passed through the upper atmosphere without problems. The pilots relaxed slightly. Then they encountered a strange mist floating in the air. "What is this?" asked one pilot as the mist touched his ship. Suddenly, warning lights flashed across his control panel. His plasma weapons, the main guns on all Krun ships, were overheating. Within seconds, they shut down to prevent explosion. All across the second wave, the same thing was happening. The atmospheric dispersal units released by humans had just one job: to neutralize plasma weapons by changing how energy flowed through them. "Admiral, second wave reports weapons failure," Ren said, his voice shaking. They say the humans have deployed some kind of gas that affects our plasma systems." Tack slammed his fist on his chair. "Impossible. How could they know about our technology? How could they develop countermeasures so quickly?" Before Ren could answer, the lights on the bridge flickered. Control panels began showing error messages. Systems throughout the massive ship were failing one by one. "Admiral, we're being targeted by some kind of energy beam from the planet," Ren reported. "It's not damaging the ship, but it's shutting down our systems." "Impossible," Tack whispered as the Imperator's own systems began failing around him. "They've developed countermeasures specifically for our technology." In the Earth Command Center, Colonel Sue watched the screens with satisfaction. The disruptor beam was working perfectly. It was based on the power systems of Dahl's ship, but reversed to shut down similar systems instead of powering them. Target their weapons and engines only, Sue ordered. Leave life support and basic functions untouched. Why not disable everything? Asked a general from another country. We could destroy them completely. We don't need to destroy them, Sue stated firmly. Just demonstrate that aggression is futile. They should be shown that we can defend ourselves without needing to kill. Dahl looked at Sue with new respect. In the Krun Empire, mercy was seen as weakness. Here, it was a choice. On the Imperator, Admiral Tak faced a difficult decision. His mighty fleet was helpless. The fighters couldn't attack, and the big ships couldn't use their main weapons. Even if they landed troops, there was no guarantee that human defenses wouldn't have countermeasures for their ground weapons too. Admiral, we're receiving a transmission from Earth, Ren said. Colonel Sue's face appeared on the main screen. This is Earth Defense Command to Krun Fleet. Your weapons have been disabled. Your fighters have been neutralized. We ask you to retreat from our solar system. How did you prepare for us? Tak demanded. How did you know our weaknesses? Sue smiled slightly. We had help from someone who believes cooperation is better than conquest. We have no desire to destroy your ships or harm your people, but we will defend our world. Tak looked around at his failing ship. The other warships reported similar problems. With angry movements, he gave the order to retreat. This isn't over, he told Sue before cutting the transmission. The Krun ships turned and left Earth's solar system, their mighty weapons silent. On Earth, celebrations began. For the first time in history, all nations had worked together against a common threat. Leaders from every country met in the days after the Krun retreat. They agreed that Earth needed to be ready if the aliens returned. 1 week after the battle, the Terran Defense Alliance was formed. It would coordinate all of Earth's defense resources and lead research into space technology. Wu, who had been the first to understand the importance of Dahl's information, was elected as its first director. Today marks a new chapter for humanity, Wu said in his acceptance speech. We have faced our first extraterrestrial threat and prevailed without firing a single lethal shot. This shows what kind of people we truly are. We defend, but we do not destroy without need. Dahl, now officially Earth's first alien resident, stood in the crowd listening. She had lost her home among the stars, but perhaps she had found a better one here on this small blue planet. Emperor Mox sat alone in his private chamber. The room was dark except for the glow from screens showing the failed attack on Earth. He had watched the recordings 100 times. Each viewing made his anger grow stronger. No one defeated the Krun Empire. No one. Mox called for his high command to meet. When the 12 military leaders gathered in the throne room, they could see that their emperor was in a dangerous mood. His gray skin had turned almost black with rage, and all 4 of his eyes glowed bright red. The humans have made a fool of me, Mox said. His voice was quiet, which made it more frightening. This cannot stand. General Lin, who had replaced the disgraced Admiral Tak, stepped forward. My emperor, perhaps we should study the humans further before attacking again. Their technology. Silence. Mox shouted. I will not hear talk of delay. I want action. I designate Earth as a Class 1 threat to galactic stability. The generals gasped. Class 1 was the highest threat level, previously used only 3 times in the Empire's 1,000-year history. Prepare the Void Hammer, Mox ordered. Even General Lin looked shocked now. The Void Hammer. But my emperor, that weapon has never been used on an inhabited world. It would kill billions. And it will show the galaxy what happens to those who defy us. Mox replied coldly. Begin preparations immediately. Far across the galaxy, on planet Teller, 3 beings met in secret. They were not Krun, but members of races that had been conquered long ago. Van was tall with blue skin and 6 arms. Jory had scales and a long neck. Kep looked almost human except for his golden eyes. "Have you seen the reports?" Ban asked. "A primitive world called Earth defeated a Krun attack fleet. They say the humans used special weapons that shut down Krun technology without destroying it." Jory added, "No one has ever done that before." Kep nodded. "My sources say Emperor Mox has declared Earth a Class 1 threat. He plans to use the Void Hammer." The three looked at each other with worry. They led secret resistance groups on their home planets, fighting against Krun rule. But they had never made much progress. "We must contact these humans," Ban decided. "If they can stand against the Krun, perhaps together we can finally break free." That night, 3 secret messages traveled through space, heading for Earth. Meanwhile, on Earth, work continued day and night. The Terran Defense Alliance had built a large facility in South Korea where scientists from all nations worked together. They had one goal: to prepare for the Krun's return. Dr. Eun led the team studying the drive system from Dahl's ship. They had made a breakthrough just last week. "The modified engine works," she told Director Wu during their daily meeting. "We can travel faster than light." Wu looked impressed. "How fast?" "Fast enough to reach Nexus Station in 3 days," Yun replied. "It's the nearest neutral trading post in this sector of the galaxy." Wu nodded thoughtfully. "So we could send representatives there. Make our case to other species before the Krun attack again." "Exactly. And Dahl says many races at Nexus Station don't like the Krun. They might help us." A month later, Earth's first interstellar ship was ready. Named Harmony, it was built using a mix of human innovation and Krun technology. It was smaller than Krun ships, but faster and more efficient. Dr. Yun was chosen to lead the diplomatic mission to Nexus Station. The night before launch, she visited Dahl in her quarters. "Are you nervous?" Dahl asked. Yun smiled, terrified, but also excited. "We're going to meet other intelligent species. Just remember, at Nexus Station, show strength but also wisdom," Dahl advised. "Many races there fear the Krun. They will respect you for standing against them, but they will only help if they believe you are different from the Krun." The next day, Harmony launched from Earth. The ship carried 20 humans, including scientists, diplomats, and security personnel. As they activated the faster-than-light drive, the stars blurred around them. 3 days later, they arrived at Nexus Station. It was huge, a spinning ring in space with thousands of lights. Ships of many different designs docked at its outer edges. Inside, Yun and her team found a place filled with incredible sights. Dozens of different alien species walked through wide hallways. Some had multiple arms, some floated rather than walked. Others had skin that changed color as they moved. Word spread quickly about the humans' arrival. Everyone wanted to see the beings who had defeated a Krun attack fleet. When Yun requested a formal meeting with station representatives, 12 different species agreed to attend. The meeting took place in a large circular room. Yun stood in the center, feeling the eyes of many strange beings upon her. "My name is Dr. Yun from planet Earth," she began. 4 months ago, we made first contact with the Krun Empire when they attacked our world." She showed recordings of the battle, carefully edited to focus on how Earth had disabled Krun weapons without destroying their ships. "We are not warmongers," she explained. "Our weapons development stems from our need to protect, not conquer. We seek peaceful integration into galactic society." An alien with 4 tentacles spoke up. "Yet you defeated Krun warships. No one has done this in 500 years." "We value innovation," Yun replied. "And we had help from a Krun who believed in cooperation rather than conquest." By the end of the meeting, several species had offered trade agreements with Earth. 2 even suggested military alliances. It was more successful than Yun had dared hope. Back in the Krun Empire, strange things were happening. Many officers who had served with Dahl or knew of her had begun to question the Emperor's judgment. They met in secret, spreading Dahl's last message before she betrayed the Empire. The humans could have destroyed our ships but chose not to. They seek exchange, not conquest. Is this not wiser than endless war? One such meeting took place on a Krun military base. 20 officers gathered, all risking their lives by being there. General Lin led the discussion. The Void Hammer will be ready in 2 months, he told them. It will destroy Earth completely. Billions will die. For what? Asked one officer. Because they defended themselves. The Emperor has lost his way, Lin said. I served him loyally for 40 years. But this is wrong. Earth doesn't deserve destruction. They could have annihilated our fleet but chose restraint. They represent hope for a different kind of strength. The officers nodded in agreement. Their numbers were growing every day. Soon, they would have enough support to challenge the Emperor's decision. But time was running out. The Void Hammer, most terrible weapon in the Krun arsenal, was nearly ready, and Emperor Mox grew more determined each day to use it against the humans who had dared to defy him. The biggest ship in the history of the Krun Empire moved slowly through space. It was called the Void Hammer, and it was not like other ships. It did not carry soldiers or settlers. It carried only one thing, a weapon that could kill an entire planet. Emperor Mox stood on the command deck, looking out at the stars. He had left his throne world for the first time in 10 years to lead this mission himself. Nothing would stop him from destroying Earth. How long until we reach the target? Mox asked. 3 days, Emperor, replied Captain Gam. We have 30 warships protecting the Void Hammer. Nothing can stop us. Mox nodded, his 4 eyes gleaming with satisfaction. Soon, the humans would be gone, and the galaxy would remember why the Krun Empire was feared. On Earth, scientists worked day and night in an underground facility. Dr. Yun hadn't slept in 2 days. Her eyes were red, but she kept working. They knew the Void Hammer was coming. Dahl had warned them. Will it work? Asked Director Wu, looking at the strange device in the center of the lab. It has to, Yun said. We've tested it on small scale. The harmony field works exactly as we hoped. The device didn't look impressive. It was a silver sphere with blue lights blinking on its surface. But inside was the most advanced technology ever created on Earth. It combined human innovation with knowledge Dahl had provided about Krun systems. Begin final preparations, Wu ordered. We'll only get 1 chance. 2 days later, the alarm sounded. The Void Hammer had entered the outer solar system, moving toward Earth with its escort of warships. In command centers around the world, humans watched their screens with tense faces. This was the moment that would decide if their planet lived or died. Harmony field at full power, reported a technician. Wu took a deep breath. Activated now. Yun pressed her hand on the scanner. The silver sphere began to spin faster and faster. Blue light spread out from it, forming a wave that moved through the walls, through the ground, up into the sky, and out into space. The light wasn't visible to human eyes once it left Earth, but special cameras showed it expanding outward, reaching toward the approaching Krun fleet. On the Void Hammer, Emperor Mox was preparing his victory speech when the lights flickered. What was that? He demanded. Unknown energy wave approaching, Emperor, said a nervous officer. It just passed through our outer sensors. Before Mox could respond, the wave hit the ship. Alarms blared as systems began shutting down across the massive vessel. The main weapon, the planet killer, went dark. The engines stopped. Only life support and basic functions remained working. What is happening? Mox shouted, his voice filled with rage and fear. All around the Void Hammer, the escort ships faced the same problem. Their weapons died. Their engines stopped. They floated helplessly in space. A message came through on all communication systems. On the screen appeared a human face. Director Wu of Earth. This is Director Wu of Earth, he said calmly. We have disabled your weapons. We seek peace, not your destruction. Stand down. Emperor Mox stared at the screen in disbelief. How is this possible? The Void Hammer cannot be stopped. But it had been stopped. The harmony field had done what no weapon could do. It had disabled aggressive technology while leaving life support untouched. The Krun ships were alive but helpless. "You cannot keep us disabled forever," Mox said to Wu. "When your field fails, we will destroy you." "The field doesn't need to run forever," Wu replied. "Just long enough." Mox didn't understand what the human meant until 3 days later. That's when the news arrived from across the Empire. 17 worlds had declared independence. They had heard about Earth's victory and chosen that moment to break free. Worse, General Lin and his supporters had taken control of the Krun homeworld. A High Council voted to remove Emperor Mox from power. "Your obsession with Earth has cost us our empire," said the message from General Lin. "The Council demands your immediate return and abdication." Mox roared with anger, but there was nothing he could do. His ship couldn't move, his weapon couldn't fire. He had lost everything. 1 month later, the Krun ships were allowed to return home, but without their weapons. The Void Hammer was taken apart, its terrible technology destroyed. 6 months after that, representatives from 50 worlds gathered on Nexus Station to sign a new agreement, the Galactic Concordat. It was a promise of peace and cooperation between all intelligent species. Earth was named as a founding member, alongside the reformed Krun Republic and many former Krun subjects. The first act of the Concordat was to establish rules for weapon technology. No more planet killers would be built. Instead, defensive systems would be shared with all members. Earth's weapon factories, which had once terrified the Krun, were changed to create these defensive systems. The harmony field became the symbol of the new alliance, technology that protected without destroying. 1 year after first contact, Dole walked beside Dr. Yun through the halls of a new building on the Korean peninsula. It was the Interspecies Defense Academy, where students from 30 different worlds came to learn. They stopped at a window overlooking the training yard. Young humans practiced alongside beings with blue skin, scales, tentacles, and even some that looked like walking plants. "Did you ever imagine this?" Eon asked, smiling at her friend. Doll shook her head. Her gray skin had a healthy shine now, and she wore the blue uniform of an academy teacher. "When I first came to Earth, I thought I was studying a primitive species," she said. "I was supposed to find your weaknesses. Instead, I found your strength." "Which is?" Eon asked. "You don't seek power for its own sake. You seek solutions. When faced with superior weapons, you didn't try to build bigger ones. You found a way to make weapons unnecessary." Below them, a young Krun student was helping a human learn a new computer system. They worked together easily, without fear. Humans never needed to conquer the stars, Dahl reflected, watching the students with pride. The stars came to them instead. Aeon nodded, thinking of how far they had come, and how far they still might go. The universe was vast, but with friends instead of enemies, it felt full of promise rather than threat. The end.